Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Speak and Feel English, the podcast where we talk about real thoughts, real emotions, and real growth in a way that truly connects with you. I am Mia.
And I am Ethan. Today's conversation is going to feel simple on the surface, but powerful when you really sit with it. We are talking about something that most people underestimate, little habits that quietly improve your life over time.
Exactly. And what makes this topic so interesting is that these habits are not dramatic or overwhelming. They do not require huge motivation or big life changes. Instead, they are small actions, repeated consistently, that slowly shape who you become.
That is such an important point, because people often wait for motivation or big moments to change their lives. But in reality, life changes through repetition, not intensity.
I completely agree. And for me, one of the first little habits that made a difference was something very simple: starting my day without immediately checking my phone. It sounds small, but it changed the entire tone of my mornings.
That is actually something I struggled with for a long time. The moment I woke up, I would check notifications, messages, social media, and suddenly my mind was already busy before I even got out of bed.
Exactly. And when your day begins with noise, your mind never really gets a chance to be calm. But when I started giving myself even 10 quiet minutes in the morning, I noticed that I felt more grounded and less reactive throughout the day.
That is interesting, because it's not about doing something big in those 10 minutes. It's simply about protecting your mental space before the world starts influencing it.
Yes, and that is what makes small habits so powerful. They do not look impressive from the outside, but they change your internal experience. And when your internal experience changes, everything else follows.
For me, one habit that had a similar effect was making my bed every morning. It sounds almost too simple to matter, but it created a sense of order in my day.
That is actually a great example. People often dismiss habits like that, but they send a message to your brain that you are someone who completes things, someone who takes care of your environment.
Exactly. And once you start your day with one completed task, it becomes easier to continue that pattern. It builds momentum without you even realizing it.
And I think that's something we need to emphasize. Momentum is built through small wins. You do not need to change your entire life overnight. You just need to create small moments of consistency.
Right. And consistency is where most people struggle. They think habits need to be perfect or intense, but the truth is, consistency matters more than perfection.
Absolutely. And another small habit that helped me was drinking water first thing in the morning. It sounds basic, but it made me feel more awake and more intentional.
It is interesting how physical habits like that can affect your mental state. When you take care of your body, your mind follows.
Yes, and that is why these habits work quietly. They do not demand attention, but they slowly improve your quality of life.
And I think the key idea here is awareness. Once you start noticing how small actions affect you, you begin to make better choices naturally.
Exactly. It's not about forcing yourself. It's about understanding yourself.
I think one of the most underrated habits people overlook is the habit of taking intentional pauses during the day. Not long breaks, not distractions, but small, mindful pauses that allow your mind to reset. It sounds simple, but it creates a huge difference in how you experience your work and your thoughts.
That is such an important point, because we often associate productivity with constant motion. We feel like if we stop, even for a moment, we are falling behind. But in reality, the mind is not designed to operate continuously without rest. When you allow yourself even a few minutes to breathe, to step back, you actually come back stronger and more focused.
Exactly. I used to push myself to keep going for hours without stopping, thinking that was discipline. But I noticed that my work quality dropped and I became mentally exhausted. When I started taking 5-minute pauses after completing tasks, everything changed. My focus improved, my thinking became clearer, and I felt less overwhelmed.
And what is interesting is that those pauses do not need to be structured or complicated. Sometimes it is just sitting quietly, looking outside, or simply closing your eyes for a moment. It is about giving your brain a break from constant input.
Yes, and that connects to another small habit that helps me a lot, writing things down. Not in a formal journaling way, but just capturing thoughts, ideas, or even worries on paper. It helped me clear my mind.
That is such a powerful practice. When thoughts stay in your head, they tend to repeat and create stress. But when you write them down, they feel more manageable. It is like you are taking control of your thoughts instead of letting them control you.
Exactly. And sometimes when I wrote things down, I realized that what I was worrying about was not as serious as it felt in my head. Writing gave me perspective.
Perspective is everything. And I think that is what small habits do. They quietly shift your perspective without forcing you to change everything at once.
Another habit I started practicing was walking without any distractions. No phone, no music, no podcasts, just walking. At first, it felt uncomfortable because I was so used to constant stimulation.
That is actually very relatable. Silence can feel uncomfortable when you are not used to it, but over time, it becomes something you appreciate.
Yes, and during those walks, I noticed that my thoughts became clearer. Ideas would come naturally, and I felt more connected to myself.
And that connection is something we often lose in our busy lives. We are constantly consuming information, but we rarely give ourselves time to process it.
Exactly. And these small habits, pausing, writing, walking, create that space for processing.
I also think that another underrated habit is learning to say no to things that do not align with your priorities. It is not easy, but it protects your time and energy.
That is such a valuable point. Saying yes to everything can make you feel productive, but it often leads to burnout.
Yes, and when you start saying no intentionally, you create room for what truly matters.
And that ties back to awareness. The more aware you are of your habits and your choices, the more control you have over your life.
Exactly. And these habits may seem small, but they are building something bigger: clarity, balance, and a sense of control.
Another small habit that quietly transformed my life was setting daily intentions instead of overwhelming goals. I used to create long to-do lists that felt impossible to complete, and by the end of the day, I felt like I had failed.
That is something a lot of people struggle with. We often confuse ambition with overloading ourselves. What changed when you shifted to intentions?
It made everything feel more realistic and achievable. Instead of saying, I need to do everything today, I would focus on 1 or 2 meaningful actions. That shift reduced stress and increased consistency.
That makes a lot of sense. When goals are too big, they create pressure. But when they are small and intentional, they create progress.
Exactly. And progress builds confidence. Even completing one important task gives you a sense of accomplishment.
For me, one of the most impactful habits was becoming aware of my self-talk. I did not try to eliminate negative thoughts completely because that is unrealistic, but I started noticing them.
Awareness is such a powerful step. Most of the time, we are not even conscious of how we speak to ourselves.
Yes, and once I started noticing my thoughts, I realized how often I was being overly critical. I would say things to myself that I would never say to someone else.
That is such an important realization. The way we talk to ourselves shapes our confidence and our actions.
Exactly. So I started making a small change. Whenever I noticed a negative thought, I would pause and reframe it. Not in a forced positive way, but in a more balanced way.
That is a healthy approach. It is not about ignoring reality, but about changing the tone of your inner voice.
Yes, and over time, that habit changed how I felt about myself. It made me more patient and less harsh.
Another small habit that helped me was limiting comparison. It is so easy to compare your life with others, especially in a world where everyone shares highlights.
That is true. Comparison can quietly drain your energy and self-worth.
Exactly. So I started focusing more on my own journey. Instead of asking, am I better than someone else? I started asking, am I improving compared to my past self?
That is such a healthy shift. It keeps your focus on growth instead of competition.
Yes, and it makes the process more fulfilling.
Another habit that had a surprisingly strong impact on my life was simplifying decisions. I realized that I was spending too much mental energy on small, unnecessary choices.
That is so true.
Decision fatigue is real, and it can affect your productivity and mood.
Exactly. So I started reducing the number of decisions I had to make daily. Simple things like planning meals, organizing my schedule, and setting routines made a big difference.
And those routines create stability. When certain parts of your day are predictable, your mind feels less overwhelmed.
Yes, and that extra mental energy can then be used for more important tasks.
For me, one habit that made a big difference was organizing my physical space. Keeping my surroundings clean and structured helped me feel more focused.
Your environment definitely affects your mindset. A cluttered space often leads to a cluttered mind.
Exactly. And it is not about perfection. It is about creating a space where you feel comfortable and clear.
Another habit I adopted was practicing gratitude daily. Not in a formal way, but just taking a moment to appreciate something.
Gratitude has a powerful effect on your perspective. It shifts your focus from what is missing to what is already present.
Yes, and that shift can improve your mood instantly.
And over time, it changes how you see your life. When you take a step back and look at all these habits, what stands out is their simplicity. None of them require extreme effort or dramatic changes. They are small, manageable actions that anyone can start.
And that is what makes them sustainable. Big changes often fail because they are difficult to maintain, but small habits fit naturally into your life.
Exactly. And the key is consistency. Doing something small every day is more powerful than doing something big once in a while.
It is like building a foundation. Each habit is a small brick, and over time, those bricks create something strong and stable.
And what is interesting is that these habits do not just change your routine, they change your identity.
Yes, because when you repeat an action, you start to see yourself differently. You become someone who is consistent, aware, and intentional.
And that identity shift is what leads to long-term change.
Exactly. So if someone is listening and feeling overwhelmed, the best advice would be to start small.
Choose one habit, just one, something simple and realistic.
And focus on consistency, not perfection.
Because perfection creates pressure, but consistency creates progress.
And over time, those small steps will lead to big change.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing this conversation with us.
If you found value in this discussion and want more meaningful conversations like this,
make sure to subscribe to Speak and Feel English and share this podcast with someone who might need it.
keep growing, keep learning, and remember, small habits create big change.